This is the backstory behind my 1982 F100 pickup, including my plans for it in the future. This is what it looked like when I bought it in January of 2021. It was a 302 with a 4-speed manual. When I got it home, I started taking it apart and realized it would need a lot more work than we thought. It was fairly rusty and had a few issues I wanted to take care of. I spent lots of time learning how to do paint and body work. This was my first paint project, and there was a lot of time spent correcting mistakes. I learned that it is better to take your time and make sure you do everything correctly the first time rather than cutting corners and having to correct them later. I painted it in race red single stage paint. I regret using the single stage paint now, but at the time it seemed like the easiest. Ultimately, I'm happy with how it came out for now, but I plan on correcting some of the issues later down the road. The bed was one of my favorite parts. I used reclaimed wood and finished it with a light stain and added stainless steel bed strips. I ended up going with a brown and tan interior. I'm really happy with how the interior came out and the colors I chose. I also wanted a decent sound system, so I went with a Rockville 12-inch sub and two 6x9 speakers behind the seat with 6.5 speakers in the doors. The 302 that was in the truck was pretty worn. The cylinders and pistons were worn down and the bearings were toast. I found this Ranger that someone had swapped into 302 into and decided to use the engine that was in it instead. It was a roller motor, so I was excited to see the performance of it compared to my old motor, but as soon as I ran it for the first time, I realized it was losing oil pressure and the bearings were bad in it as well. I pulled it out and decided that instead of buying another used engine, I would rebuild this one and build it the way I wanted to. I went with a pretty stock bottom end with ARP main and rod bolts. The main focus on the rebuild was the cam and heads. They were ported and the valves were oversized and strengthened, and the rocker ratio was raised from 0.6 to 0.7, allowing for more valve lift. The cam we chose was an Elgin cam with the highest duration we could find. I was super happy with how this setup ran. It sounded really good and had plenty of power. I ended up putting a T5 behind it and a custom hydraulic clutch system. It was lots of fun to drive and take to car shows. During the summer of 2024, I put about 8,000 miles on it until I started having a couple issues. I kept having issues with the fuel mixture and timing. One day I was tuning on it in the driveway and the belts flew off and the engine shut off. The most concerning part, that the timing cover was shattered on the ground. Then I discovered that the front half of the crank didn't seem to be attached to the back half anymore. The front half of the crank had snapped off, taking the block, front two pistons, the oil pump, timing chain, and the front two rods with it. My plans with it are to build a new small block, but I think I'm going to go probably with a stroker motor, and I'll probably also switch over to an EFI system for a little bit more reliability.